Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. How are you? And the topic we are going to discuss today, but patterns of organization, refers to the kind of construction of the body. One of the most striking ordered series of changes in evolution is reflected in the body plans in the animal kingdom and the protist. And the evolution is the change with the passage of time. And evolution changes does not always lead to the complex organisms. Sometimes evolution leads to the simpler ones also. Evolution changes do not always means progress and increased complexity. Evolution frequently results in backtracking, in failed experiments, and inefficient or useless structure. Sometimes, due to the evolution, extinctions also occur. Evolution results in the frequent dead ends, even though the route to the dead end may be filled with grandeur. And what is the symmetry? First of all, we are going to discuss is the symmetry. Symmetry means how the parts of animals are arranged around a point or an axis. Symmetry is the regularity of the form is called the symmetry. There are three types of symmetry: asymmetric, radial symmetry, and bilateral symmetry. The bodies of the animals and protists are organized into almost definitely diverse form. Within this diversity, however, are certain patterns of organization. The concept of symmetry is fundamental to understanding animal organizations. Symmetry describes how the parts of an animal are arranged around a point or an axis. First of all, asymmetry. A body is to be asymmetrical when the body of an animal cannot be divided into two equal halves by any plane. It is the absence of a central point or the axis around which the body parts are equally distributed. It has no adaptive value. It gives no advantage to an organism. No regularity. In case of asymmetry, no regularity of the form. Here in the asymmetrical animals, absence of the central point or the axis around which the body parts are equally distributed. This asymmetrical animals belongs to most of the protists and many sponges, as shown in the diagram. So asymmetry cannot be said to be an adaptation to anything or advantageous to any organism. Asymmetrical organisms do not develop complex communication, sensory or locomotor functions. Clearly, however, protist and animals whose bodies consist of aggregate of cells have flourished. Sea anemone can move along a substrate but only very slowly. You have seen sea anemone. The sea anemone and it has sensory and feeding structure that are uniformly distributed around its body. Sea anemone do not have distinct head and tail ends. Instead, one point of reference is the end of the animal that has mouth, and the end of the animal that contain mouth is the oral end, and the second point of the reference that is opposite end to the mouth is the aboral end. So two ends are present, one end that contains the mouth, the oral end, and second end that is opposite to the mouth is the aboral end. So sea anemones are called the radially symmetrical animals because they contain a body parts that is arranged to the central axis. And this type of symmetry, so sea anemones show symmetry, and this type of symmetry is called the radial symmetry. And what the definition of radial symmetry is? It is the arrangement of the body parts in such a way that any plane passing through the central oral aboral axis divide the animal into mirror images. Arrangement of the body parts in such a way that any plane passing through the central oral aboral axis divide the animal into mirror images is called the radial symmetry, and sea anemones show the radial symmetry. Often modified by the arrangement of some structures in pairs or in other combinations around the central oral aboral axis. The paired arrangement of some structure in radial symmetrical animal is called the biradial symmetry. The arrangement of structure in 5 around a radial animal is called the Pentatosymmetry symmetry. This diagram is of sponge that show asymmetry. Here no symmetry is present in case of the sponges, just a heap of cells is present as shown in the diagram. And the second one is of the sea anemone, that is showing the radial symmetry. A central point is present, and around the central points body structures are present, and any plane passing through the central oral and aboral axis divide the animal into mirror images in case of the radial symmetrical animals. Here the aboral end, and on the above side where the mouth is present is the oral end. Plane passing through the central oral and aboral sides axis divide the animal into mirror images is the radial symmetry, and the animals containing the symmetry radial symmetry are called the radially symmetrical animals, while that of the sponge that doesn't show any symmetry, so they are asymmetrical animals. Sensory feeding and the locomotor structure in the radial symmetrical animals could never be called the simple. They are not comparable to the complex sensory, locomotor, and feeding structures in many other animals. The evolution of such complex structure in radially symmetrical animals would require repeated distribution of specialized structure around the animal. And starfish show the pentaradial symmetry, while that of the ctenophorans, Pleurobranchia show biradial symmetry. These are two diagrams, two animals showing. Here the starfish that show pentaradial symmetry. The arrangement of structure in 5 around a radial animal is called the pentaradial symmetry. Example is the echinoderm. Starfish belong to the phylum Echinodermata. And the second one is the Pleurobranchia, or the animals belonging to phylum Ctenophora, show biradial symmetry. The pair arrangement of some structures in radially symmetrical animal is called the biradial symmetry. And examples, members of phylum Ctenophora. Next is the bilateral symmetry. This is the arrangement of body parts such that a single plane passing between the upper and the lower surfaces and through the longitudinal axis of an animal divides the animal into right and the left mirror images. In case of the radial symmetrical animals, we have discussed about the oral and the aboral ends. Now, in case of the bilateral symmetrical animals, we are discussing about the right and the left mirror images, not the oral and the aboral points. Bilateral symmetrical animals. Bilateral symmetry is the characteristics of active, crawling or swimming animals. Because bilateral animals move primarily in one direction, one end of the animal is continually encountering the environment. The end that meets the environment is usually where complex sensory, nervous and feeding structures evolve and develop. These developments result in the formation of a distinct head and are called the cephalization. Formation of a head is called the cephalization. Cephalization occurs at an animal's anterior end. Posterior is the opposite to the anterior end. It is the animal tail end. Other important terms of direction and terms describing the body planes and sections apply to the bilateral animals. Locating body parts relative to a point of reference or an imaginary line passing through the body. Here is the diagram showing the bilateral symmetry, planes and the terms of direction useful in locating the parts of a bilateral animal. A bilaterally symmetrical animal such as this fox has only one plane of symmetry. An imaginary median plane is the only one plane through which the animal could be cut to yield mirror images, or the mirror image halves. Here is the anterior end and the posterior end, and the lower is the ventral end and the above side is the dorsal end. Now the median plane and transverse plane and the frontal plane. This is a table 7.2 that showed the animal symmetry. What the symmetry is? The symmetry is the regularity of the form. Asymmetry is what? The arrangement of body parts without a central axis or the plane is the asymmetry. That is, example is the sponges. Next is the bilateral symmetry, the arrangement of body parts such that a single plane passing between the upper and the lower surfaces and through the longitudinal axis divides the animal into right and the left mirror images, as in case of the vertebrates. Radial symmetry, the arrangement of body parts such that any plane passing through the oral aboral axis divides the animal into mirror images, as in case of the cnidarians. Radial symmetry can be modified by the arrangement of some structure in pairs or other combinations around the central axis by radial symmetry, as in case of the ctenophorans, and some anthozone and the pentaradial symmetry in the echinoderms. And 7.3 terms of direction. These terms are for locating body parts relative to the point of reference or an imaginary plane passing through the body. Here is the aboral. The end opposite to the mouth is called the aboral end. Next is the oral. These are the specific terms. Oral is what? The end containing the mouth is called the oral end. Anterior is what? The head end. Usually the end of the bilateral animal that meets its environment is called the anterior end. The end that contains the head is the anterior, and the tail end is the posterior end. Caudal toward the tail, cephalic toward the head, and distal away from the point of attachment of a structure on the body. For example, the toes are distal to the knee. Proximal toward the point of attachment of a structure on the body, that is the hip is the proximal to the knee. Dorsal, the back of the animal, usually the upper surface, synonymous with the posterior for animals that walk upright. What is the ventral? The belly of an animal, usually the lower surface, synonymous with the anterior for animals that walk upright. Inferior is what? Below a point of reference, the mouth is the inferior to the nose in humans. Superior, above the point of the reference, the neck is superior to the chest. Next is the lateral, away from the plane that divides the bilateral animal into mirror images. And medial, on or near the plane that divides the bilateral animals into mirror images. These are the important terms of direction: aboral, oral, anterior, and these are terms locating the body parts reference relative to the reference. Next topic, other patterns of organization. We have discussed about the symmetry. We have discussed about asymmetry, bilateral symmetry, and radial symmetry. Now, in addition to the body symmetry, other patterns of animal organizations are also present. These patterns show evolutionary trends. There are following types. First of all is the unicellular level of organization. The organisms whose bodies consist of single cell or cellular aggregates are known as unicellular. Their organization is known as unicellular level of organization. Unicellular organisms are not simple. It is also known as cytoplasmic level of organization because all living functions are carried out within a single plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is what? The cell is surrounded by a structure that is called the plasma membrane. And functions of unicellular organism within a single cell. All unicellular organisms perform following functions: locomotion, water and ion regulation, reproduction in a single cell, digestion, and sensory perception. Cellular aggregates or the colonies consist of loose associates of cell. When cells are present in the combined form, they form the colonies, and they consist of loose associations of cells that exhibit little interdependence and cooperation or coordination of the function. Therefore, cellular aggregates cannot be considered as tissues. When cell start to live together and show some interdependency, cooperation and coordination of function. For example is the sponge. These organisms show some division of labor. Division of labor is was the काम की तकसीम. Some cells are specialized for reproduction, some cells are for the nutrition, and some cells are involved in the structural functions. Diploblastic organization diplodes two folds blast to sprout. This is the simplest tissue level of organization when cells combine and they form tissues. The organization in which two layers form different tissues is called the diploblastic organization. You can say double layered. Example is the cilium traits for the cnidarians. Two layers are these. First one is the ectoderm. This ectoderm gives rise to epidermis, the outer layer of the body wall. Second one is the endoderm. Endoderm gives rise to the gastrodermis, the tissue that lines the gut cavity, lines the alimentary canal. In case of the diploblastic organisms, cells are organized into tissues in most animal phyla. The body parts are organized into layers. These layers are derived from two embryonic tissue layers. Ectoderm give rise to epidermis, outer layer of the body wall, and endoderm that give rise to the gastrodermis that lines the gut cavity. Between the epidermis and gastrodermis, a third non-cellular layer is present that is called the mesoglea. In some diploblastic organisms, all cells occur in the mesoglea, but they are always derived from the ectoderm or the endoderm. Double-layered organisms are called the diploblastic organisms. Here the epidermis is present and that is formed from the ectoderm, and endodermis is present that is formed from the endoderm, and mesoglea is present. The cells in the each tissue layer are functionally interdependent. The gastrodermis consists of nutritive, digestive and muscular cells, and the epidermis contains epithelial and muscular cells. The feeding movement of hydra or the swimming movement of the jellyfish are only possible when groups of the cells cooperate, showing tissue level of organization. Level of organization, and cells in each tissue layer are functionally interdependent. The gastrodermis consists of nutritive cells and muscular cells, and epidermis consists of epithelial cells and muscular cells. Example is the feeding movement of hydra. Same is the case the feeding movement of hydra and the swimming movements of jellyfish. These are the possible. These movements are only possible when groups of cells cooperate, showing tissue level of organization. Here in the diagram, ectoderm, first layer is the ectoderm, and the second inner layer is the endoderm that lines the gut cavity, and between the ectoderm and endoderm layer is present that is called the mesoglea. This is the diploblastic body plan that have tissue level of organization and containing two layers, ectoderm and endoderm, and containing a third layer between the ectoderm and endoderm that is called the mesoglea. Third organization is the triploblastic organization, as the name indicates, containing three layers. The organization in which the animals whose tissues are derived from three embryological layers are called the triploblastic organizations, and the animals that contain triploblastic organizations are called the triploblastic animals. Examples is the mollusk. These three layers are ectoderm that forms the outer layer of the body wall, endoderm that lines the gut, and the third one layer is the mesoderm that is present between the ectoderm and endoderm is called the mesoderm. It gives rise to sportive and contractile and the blood cells. Most triploblastic animals have an organ system level of organizations. Tissues are organized to form excretory, nervous, digestive, reproductive, circulatory and other systems. Tissues are organized into organs and the systems: excretory system, nervous system, digestive system, reproductive system. And the triploblastic animals are usually bilateral symmetrical. They show bilateral symmetry, or they have evolved from the bilateral ancestors, and these are relatively active from the radial symmetrical animals. Triploblastic animals are organized into several subgroups based on the presence or absence of a body cavity. Body cavity or the body cavity of the coelom, and coelom is the space between the gut and the body wall. And for those that possess one, the kind of the body cavity present, a body cavity is a fluid-filled space in which the internal organs are suspended and separated from the body wall. Body cavities are advantageous because they provide more room for organ development, they provide space for the organ development, provide more surface area for diffusion of the gases or the nutrients and the waste into and out of the organs, provide an area of storage, act as a hydrostatic skeleton, provide a vehicle for eliminating waste and the reproductive products from the body, facilitate the increased body size. Of these, the hydrostatic skeleton serve further comment. Body cavity fluids give support while allowing the body to remain flexible. Hydrostatic skeleton can be illustrated with the water-filled balloon, which is a rigid yet flexible. Because the water in the balloon is incompressible, squeezing one end causes the balloon to lengthen. एक साइड को आप स्क्यूज करेंगे तो दूसरी साइड जो है वो लेंथी हो जाएगी. Compressing both ends causes the middle of the balloon to become fatter. दोनों साइड से अगर आप उसको कंप्रेस कर देंगे बैलून को तो दरमियान वाला जो एरिया है बैलून का वो फैटर हो जाएगा. In a similar fashion, the body wall muscles acting on coelomic fluid are responsible for movement and shape changes in many animals. In this paragraph, we have discussed about the body cavity. That is very important. Basic point. Body cavity is what the space, the cavity between the gut and the body wall is called the body cavity or the coelom. And in the body cavity, internal organs are suspended, and these are separated from the body wall. And the advantages of the body wall: provide room for the organ development, provide surface area for the diffusion of gases, nutrients, and waste into and out of the organs, provide area for storage, and the major point, act as a hydrostatic skeleton, provide a vehicle for eliminating waste and the reproductive products from the body, facilitate increased body size. And triploblastic animals are usually bilateral symmetrical animals. They are active animals as compared to that of the other animals that contain radial symmetry, and the animals that have no symmetry, asymmetrical animals. The skeleton and the hydrostatic skeleton is what the skeleton of the body which is produced due to fluid filled within the gastrovascular or the coelomic cavity is called the hydrostatic skeleton. Skeleton of the body that is produced due to the fluid present in the gastrovascular cavity or the coelomic cavity is called the hydrostatic skeleton, just like that of the water-filled balloon. Next, the types of triploblastic pattern. There are three types of triploblastic patterns. Triploblastic animals show following types. Acoelomate animals: if the animals doesn't contain any cavity, they are called the acoelomate animals. If they contain false cavity, they are called the pseudocoelomate. If they contain a true cavity, that are called the coelomate animals. On the basis of the presence or absence of coelom, the triploblastic animals are divided into three categories: acoelomate, pseudocoelomate, and the coelomate. And what the coelom is? The cavity between the fluid-filled cavity between the gut and the body wall is called the coelom. First of all, the triploblastic acoelomate pattern. The animal without coelom are called the acoelomate, as the name indicates, A absent, and the animals that doesn't contain any cavity are included in the category that is called the acoelomate without an coelom. Triploblastic animals whose mesodermally derived tissues form a relatively solid mass of cells between the ectodermally and endodermally derived tissues are called the acoelomate. Here, the mesoderm is present, but The mesoderm forms the solid mass of cells between the ectoderm and the endoderm type tissues are called the acoelomate. Some cells between the ectoderm and the endoderm of the acoelomate animals are loosely organized cells called the parenchyma. Parenchymal cells are not specialized for particular function. You can say the mesodermal cells are chained to the parenchymal cells. Triploblastic acoelomate animals show sac-type gut, and the most substances are distributed within the body by process of diffusion, as no specific transport system is absent in case of the triploblastic acoelomate animals. Excretory system consists of phloem cells and excretory ducts and the excretory pores, but they contain well-developed nervous system. And the examples of acoelomate pattern, triploblastic acoelomate pattern is the phylum Platyhelminthes. The animal belonging to phylum Platyhelminthes show triploblastic acoelomate pattern. Next is the triploblastic pseudocoelomate pattern. Pseudocoelom is a body cavity not entirely lined by the mesoderm. It is a remnant of the blastocoel. Blastocoel is a cavity that is present in the blastula. Pseudocoelom, it is not entirely lined by the mesoderm. No muscular or connective tissues are associated with the gut tract. No mesodermal sheet covers the inner surface of the body wall, and no membranes suspend organs in the body cavity. Pattern. A coelom is present that is not true coelom, and that is not entirely lined by the mesoderm. No muscular connective tissue, no mesodermal sheet that covers the inner surface of the body wall, no membrane suspended organs. And example of these, the animals belonging to phylum Esculmentines and Nematoda show triploblastic pseudocoelomate pattern as shown in the diagram. The third pattern is triploblastic coelomate pattern. A coelom is a body cavity that is completely surrounded by the mesoderm, and it contains two sheets, the peritoneum and the serosa. The thin mesodermal sheet, the peritoneum, lines the inner body wall, and that is continuous with the serosa that lines the outside of the visceral organs. Visceral organs are the internal body organs. The peritoneum and the serosa, these are continuous and suspend visceral structures in the body cavity. These suspending sheets are called the mesenteries. Having mesodermally derived tissue such as muscle and connective tissue associated with the internal organs enhances the function of virtually all internal body systems. Examples of the animals that show triploblastic pseudocoelomate pattern. The animals from annelids to chordates are included in this category. Dear students, now the figure 7.11 triploblastic body plans. Triploblastic animals have tissues that are derived from ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Fig A shows the triploblastic acoelomate pattern. Here that ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm is present. And Fig B shows the pseudocoelomate pattern. And Fig C shows the triploblastic coelomate pattern. Triploblastic coelomate in case of the triploblastic coelomate pattern, Fig C, mesodermal type tissues completely surround the coelom. Here you can see the peritoneum also, and also the serosa. Peritoneum is present and serosa is present, and mesentery is present that are the suspended sheets that can suspend the visceral organs. And in case of pseudocoelomate pattern, note the absence of mesodermal lining on the gut tract, while in case of the coelomate pattern, mesodermal lining is present and two sheets are present, peritoneum and the serosa. For the coelom to be true, peritoneum and serosa should be present in the body cavity. These figures also show body plans of triploblastic metazoa, diagrammatic cross section. A is the acoelomate body plan, B is the blastocoelomate. You can see the remnants of the blastocoel in case of the pseudocoelomate body plan, and C is the eucoelomate body plan. mesenchyme is present, mesoderm is present, gut on the inner side, and epidermis is present. In the fig B, gastrodermis surrounds the gut, and blastocylome is present, that is also called the pseudocylome, and muscle or the mesoderm is present. And the C is the showing the true coelom, epidermis, peritoneum, then the coelom, visible peritoneum, gastrodermis, and mesoderm, and then coelom, dorsal mesentery, and ventral mesenteries.